If you've followed Thinking Basketball over the years, you're probably familiar with the idea that I'm era agnostic. I can turn on a 1980s playoff game and get right into it. The 90s are nostalgic and brimming with personality. In the 2000s, we finally revoke illegal defense and the strategy and shooting really start to expand. And even the 1970s, with its chaotic, fast-paced style, can be really fun for me. Of course, the current era of the NBA has had this explosion of tactics and strategy that has produced some of the most complex and fascinating basketball ever. Now, that last sentence is where I lose some older fans. They've lamented all the threes in the game and the lack of defense. Hopefully some of those ideas have been put to bed, but there's still an idea that the game just doesn't look or feel like it did before this pace and space revolution. And remember, the tactics aren't the only thing that have changed. The rules have changed as well. We've documented that in detail before, what's a foul, what's a travel, and so on. But this isn't just about all the rules. This is about one particular rule and why I think it's impacted the game so much. The gather step is the idea that your two-step count starts only when you're done dribbling. This wasn't actually codified in the game for a while. In 2009, the NBA officially updated the rules to allow two steps, quote, upon the completion of a dribble, without really strictly defining what they meant by completion of a dribble. In 2019, the rulebook finally added a definition of the gather itself, which allowed players to take two steps after gathering the ball, meaning if they time the gather with a foot already contacting the ground, they could then take two more full steps, and suddenly we had players slaloming in from the three-point line without dribbling. This Giannis play went viral this year, where some fans thought Antetokounmpo took 5 steps, but the 2019 rule update formalized a step count that started when he could no longer legally dribble again. So if he gathered the ball here with two hands, the play is then a legal two-step finish. But if the gather was determined to be earlier because he couldn't dribble anymore without it being a carry, then this is 3 steps and a travel. Either way, it wasn't 5 steps in today's game, despite what your father's high school coach told you. Anyway, the smaller issue with the gather is that it allows more traveling, not just traveling by the old rule book, but even by the new rules. James Harden basically single-handedly forced the league to codify the gather after his step-back 3 technique, where there was enough walking to start a children's fundraiser. So as players blurred the line on the gather, officials in real time were reluctant to call violations. And we've reached a point where it's extremely rare to see a false positive on a travel, meaning a legal play that was wrongly called a travel. And specifically, players have learned what I call the low gather or rip through gather, which I'd also credit to Harden, who was looking to draw fouls on any arms nearby that happened to just be, existing. But that has led to NBA players now taking 3 steps illegally after gathering. This is not 3 steps from the old rules. These plays are 3 steps based on the new rules, but for some reason they are rarely, if ever, whistled as travels. But that's only part of the story. The larger issue with the gather is that it's turned dribbles and vertical finishes into ground-bound hopscotch plays. Or if you can't jump and finish at the rim, the gather has allowed solutions where players slalom through horizontal space instead of vertical space. And it's nearly impossible to make a big vertical play after some of these 2 huge steps after the gather. The Euro step, the Pinoy step, which is pretty cool as well, and the decel or pause step are all examples where players can barely jump and they're using their step cadence as misdirection. And don't get me wrong, from a certain perspective, all of these moves are pretty cool. And as we've chronicled before, they're all very creative, but they aren't really vertical. And there's something about the awe of watching people play way up in the clouds that gives basketball this je ne sais quoi that makes the athletes feel superhuman. The most popular highlights have historically been the slam dunk or the blocked shot, especially the chase down block with its heightened sense of flying. Heck, the jump shot itself takes the skill of shooting a round ball into a hanging cylinder and magnifies it because you're leaping while you do it, and leaping higher than a very giant human trying to stop you. These skywalkers of the sport have always captured our imagination. Most of the league's popular players were high flyers. Elgin Baylor, Julius Erving, David Thompson, Clyde Drexler and Phi Slamma Jamma, Dominique Wilkins, Michael Jordan, Grant Hill. Seriously, Grant Hill and his Sprite. Kobe Bryant, Vince Carter, LeBron, and on and on. Watching giant men defy gravity is not only jaw-dropping, but it became part of the DNA of the sport. I think Jordan's influence in globalizing the game is partially because he was good, but it's largely because of his aesthetic as a vertical player. He crossed over because he hung in the air like he was on a space station, and he did this while driving to the hoop and while shooting over defenders with his jumper. Those are both vertical solutions to the defense, whereas the gather step is really about ground-bound horizontal solutions. This video is sponsored by Raycon. When I take a walk, I like to listen to a good podcast, and sometimes I can't tell if people are trying to talk to me. It's a little embarrassing, but Raycon has me covered with their essential open earbuds, where now I can hear cars coming, but also people trying to talk to me. They are lightweight. Honestly, I forget they're in my ears sometimes. And they have a charging case that holds a 36-hour charge, so you can go anywhere and listen to music or a strong podcast for days. The world's your oyster. And now with Black Friday coming up, click the link in our description box or go to buyraycon.com/greatdayopen. That's how you let them know that you came from us. And over there, you'll get their audio products at up to 30% off site-wide. That includes everyday essentials, their latest releases. I don't know, maybe it's a good gift idea for the holidays. I'm just spitballing. I'm just a guy that likes open earbuds. Either way, use that link. It's a great way to support us. Go to buyraycon.com/greatdayopen. Even the post-up was largely a vertical chess match. How can I create space to get this shot off around a giant? Those dream shakes and Kevin McHale hooks were all vertical solutions to this chess match. I think this is why Anthony Edwards' game resonates with so many fans today, and why Kevin Durant's game feels timeless. This is not to say horizontal solutions aren't exciting. The crossover dribble, any shifty change of direction while dribbling, great head fakes and spins, these are all tantalizing moves. Heck, the original Euro step took your breath away. But I'd argue that while the gather step is a horizontal solution, it's just fundamentally less exciting to watch people run with a basketball than to dribble under duress. So many legendary players blend their horizontal solutions into vertical ones. Kobe Bryant hits you with some dribble move and then puts the big on a poster. That hits a lot differently than someone running with the ball to set up a dunk. And most players cannot gather and execute these crazy step techniques and get enough lift to throw it down. Now, I know aesthetics are subjective. I'm not talking about what you should like. I'm simply observing what people have historically liked and why I think these elements of the game have been so popular. Plus, these gather moves, especially the three-step gathers, kind of offend our sensibility as fans. I don't know what the platonic ideal of basketball is, but I'm fairly certain it's not running with the ball or doing whatever the heck some of these players are trying. Most importantly, the gather and these long strides have changed the moments of conflict between the offense and defense. The rhythm and heartbeat of a shot is slightly different today than it was 20 years ago. We don't have as many of these little fadeaways or Allen Iverson hop stepping into the paint. Heck, Tyrese Maxey is a blur who doesn't really play out of the gather step, and I think his maniacal wrong-footed finishing package probably resonates with multiple generations of fans in the same way that Kyrie Irving's moves do, and neither of these players is looking to hang their last legal step in the air as long as humanly possible after they stopped dribbling a while ago. The spacing of today's game has really exacerbated these gather-based moves. There's just a ton of room to play one-on-one driving into the paint that wasn't there in the past. The game's greatest finishers in traffic were almost strictly vertical because that was the only option. All those vintage mid-range jumpers were a vertical solution to all the clogged spacing around the rim. The best scorers typically shot right over the top of the defense. Compare that to James Harden, who was wildly unpopular because of his ref baiting and play style, but I also think he was an easy target because he wasn't a vertical or aerial player. Instead of finishing over and around traffic, he often avoided traffic, a stark contrast to the generation before, where wings like Paul Pierce and Tracy McGrady launched themselves into traffic at the basket. Case in point, Harden caused the codification of the gather by moving away from the hoop, not toward it. The step back itself, which was pioneered in the 80s, kind of removes that vertical out-jumping component to the shot. This also might be why the high five officiating addendum this year seems to be universally disliked. Why would we not want players to challenge shots at the apex of the release? So I kind of think the complaint about too many threes is just a way to describe so many of these stylistic changes that make the game feel different, and I do think the lack of vertical solutions is a massive part of that feeling. I suspect that if we had back to the basket moves from behind the three-point line or more face-up jab step threes, that disgruntled fans would complain less about all the threes. The NBA probably isn't going to put the gather genie back in the bottle entirely, but I do think they could A, start calling these low gather moves that are almost always travels, and B, they could add language around the speed of a step or pausing steps or make other adjustments to rein it in. Maybe, jumping from one leg to the other is antithetical to a sport where you're supposed to mostly move by dribbling. I don't know, maybe I'm an old man yelling at clouds, and all these Euro steps and scoop shots will spike basketball's popularity.
Who's laughing now?
All I'm saying is that so many drives into all this space would look and feel a lot different if players weren't allowed to gather, to say nothing of smashing into defenders with their shoulder. I still haven't heard an explanation for that one. Either way, I think the gather has given us some wildly creative Euro steps, but that creativity has come at some cost, and I think that cost has broadened the stylistic divide between the past and the present. The three-point shot and other subtle changes in the rules have made a massive difference over the years, but the recent shift in how players handle penetration and one-on-one situations, especially as they finish near the basket, has had a massive impact on the vertical component of basketball. To support this channel, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That's where we have proprietary stats on teams and players throughout the year. We also have a Discord community, and you can get all of our extra video content over there, or sign up on YouTube as a member, where we also live stream the podcast. Thanks for watching all the way to the end on this one. Hope you enjoyed it and that you are having a great day.